I can. Over the past year, I think, Minister, I asked you a few questions about the expanded asset programme, the QE programme, and I just wondered if the department had done any real work to track the impact of quantitative easing on those areas of the economy. And obviously, the growth rate this year, or in 2015, was very welcome, and the additional revenue in taxes very welcome. But did QE not play a very significant role in that, or have you attempted to actually quantify that? Thanks, Ken.
I thank Deputy Broughan for this question. Under the European Central Bank ECB Expanded Asset Purchase Programme, often referred to as quantitative easing, the euro system, comprising the ECB and the national central banks of the euro area, has been purchasing 60 billion of public and private assets per month, and plans to do so until at least March 2017, or until inflation returns to levels consistent with price stability, defined as inflation close to 2%. Purchases of sovereign debt began on the 9th of March 2015. While it is difficult to estimate directly the beneficial impact of QE on growth rates since this policy began, it is nevertheless clear that QE has boosted nominal growth, and this is one factor behind the strong tax and general government revenues growth in 2015. Assessing what the final impact to the Irish economy will be by the time the quantitative easing programme concludes is also difficult to estimate. At this stage, not least because of the contingent nature of the end date. It is worth recalling that the ECB has stated that QE will only conclude when euro area inflation returns to levels consistent with price stability. This outcome will help businesses across Europe to enjoy better access to credit, boost investment, create jobs, and thus support overall economic growth, which should offset the impact of withdrawing QE. Thus, by helping to create jobs and supporting overall economic growth in all euro area countries, including Ireland, the withdrawal of QE will signal the resumption of more normal growth activity in the euro area.
Deputy Brown.
Thanks. Well, the Minister again says it's very difficult to estimate. I think that's the kind of reply you gave me. You remember you said you might be able to produce some kind of figures in April, May last year. That it seems to be difficult to estimate, but you're clearly indicating that the withdrawal of QE would have a very significant impact. I noticed the figures you gave us recently and CSO gave us in relation to growth rates into 2021. It shows a significant decline in growth down to 2017, 2018 for whoever forms the next government. So isn't it likely that the withdrawal of QE will have that significant impact, or is it possible that QE will go on in some shape or form? And just a second point in relation to that, obviously Governor Lane and the Governing Council of the ECB are the people who take the key decisions on this. I mean, to what extent does your government or the incoming government, will it have an impact on that and be able to decide it? And just a final point I wanted to make in relation to, as you know, Minister, the experience with QE, I think in Japan and Britain, where there have been a lot of economic studies.
Let you back in.
Okay, final question.
Well, first of all, in an attempt to help in kind of measuring the effect of QE, if you look back to the budget we introduced in October of 2014, the estimate for growth was 4%. And we put some money back into the economy, and that increased demand in the domestic economy. So that drove the 4% higher. Now, two tailwinds occurred then in 2015, which hadn't been allowed for in the budget. One was QE, and even though I'd campaigned for it for 3 years, I didn't expect it to be introduced so early in 2015 as March. I thought it would be something that would come in the autumn. So we hadn't factored it into the budget. And then the decline in energy prices was unexpected as well at the start of 2015. So if you take it that it would be reasonable to expect that as a result of the budget, growth would be around 5% for 2015, the fact that it had gone up to 7%, certainly QE has had some impact. Now, the two impacts it would have is it kept interest rates down, but more importantly, it reduced the exchange rate of the euro.
Thank you.
So our exporting sector exported more and earned more money but it's very hard to quantify.
Deputy Broughan, please. Thank you.
To say, I mean, obviously, looking back, then it's a pity, in effect, that Mario Draghi and his colleagues didn't, embark on a QE programme in some respects before they did. The big downside to QE, though, as I was just about to say, obviously, in the British experience, the Japanese experience, has been an increase in inequality. That owners of assets tend to do very well. Going back to the point Deputy Healy was making about the Credit Suisse report, and would that be a concern for you as we go forward? Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I mean, this is a matter of monetary policy. And monetary policy is for the European Central Bank and the national central banks, while I have a lot of control over fiscal policy. It's the kind of stuff we do around budget time. Monetary policy is for the new banking union now, driven by the people in Frankfurt. My position was I advocated quantitative easing when it was very unpopular to do so in Europe, and was campaigning for it for about 3 years, and eventually a majority moved on side, and then it was possible for Mr. Draghi and the people in Frankfurt to move without objections in the German constitutional courts to put in quantitative easing, and it seems to be working. Europe is slowly rising, and across all countries now, including Greece, there is positive growth, and many people would attribute this to quantitative easing. The commitment is that it will continue to 2017. It'll have to be reviewed then to see will it go beyond that. But I can't see it as a permanent feature of monetary policy either. It will end at some stage. Now, the biggest risk we have, if I could make one last point, the biggest risk to our prosperity, in my view, is the biggest internal risk, is the size of debt. And we must keep pushing the debt down. But when one identifies debt as the risk factor, it's not the debt itself, it's the interest on the debt.
Thank you.
So if you remove quantitative easing and interest rates go back up, then it has an impact which would be adverse. So we need to be positioned better on the overall burden of debt by 2017, and I think we will be.
Deputy McGrath.